Okay, so I just want to remind us as Black women that your racial identity is not more important than your gender, your socioeconomic status, your sexual orientation, your religion, your sexual identity. Listen, this is why Kimberly Crenshaw created the term intersectionality, so that there would be a space within feminism to address the fact that Black women can exist in multiple identities at the same time based on our gender, our race, our socioeconomic status, our religion, and many other factors. And the purpose of intersectionality was specifically designed to say, okay, you are a woman who is Black, or you are a Black person who is a woman. And both of these identities, along with any other identity that you may possess, shapes your experience as a human being. So you can't ignore one to prioritize another, because in doing so, you're denying an aspect of your being that very much can determine certain outcomes for you or certain opportunities that you experience. I understand now that when people think of intersectional feminism, it is most often associated with rights for transgendered people. And then you have literally all women, right, who feel a connection to intersectional feminism. And that shows the power of this term that Kimberly Crenshaw created. Okay, so I'm not saying that there's anything bad about the fact that so many other women connect to intersectional feminism. But what I am saying is that since that was a space that was specifically created for Black women, we should not be running away from and shunning something that literally was designed to give words to our experiences. But see, what happens is, because so many Black women allow Black males to center themselves in any space that Black women occupy. All right? What happens is, once a Black male comes along and says he's offended by something, you're always going to have Black women say, oh no, I have to back away from this. Oh no, I have to shun this, even though it was specifically created for me. Do you understand how ridiculous that is? And then you look around and say, well, there are no spaces for Black women. And it's like, well, of course not. Because anytime someone tries to create one for you, you're the one throwing grenades at it. Sometimes we have to look at the bigger picture. It doesn't mean we have to agree with everything. So you may not agree with the concept of womanism or radical feminism or intersectional feminism. All I'm saying is to understand that there are Black women in each of those spaces who have been actively fighting for all of our rights for decades. Because understand something, there are certain studies that suggest that children have to be socially conditioned to prioritize their race over their gender. There are studies that have been done in the last few years that show that the children who participated in those studies prioritized their gender over their race, regardless of the child's age group. So what does that mean? Well, it has to be researched a bit further, but it's a possibility that children have to be taught to view themselves as race first. Because when they go through their everyday experiences as children, what they see and what they feel is that they go through certain things and they experience certain things because of their gender. which would make sense. If you're a black child growing up predominantly around other black people, then you're going to notice that maybe the way you're treated might be based on your gender. How often do we talk about how the black collective minimizes and diminishes black girls to prioritize black boys? And then amongst the girls, what you see taking place with the black girls who are darker skinned versus the black girls who are lighter skinned, and the black girls, regardless of complexion, who may have more Afrocentric features versus the black girls who might be perceived as not having strong Afrocentric features. Those things shape children's experiences to them more than their skin color. So what happens between the time a little black girl is a child and maybe, she turns 25 and 30? How does that black girl get to the point where she goes from viewing her gender as being at the center of her life experiences to growing up and becoming a black woman who is race first, to the point where she doesn't address her gender related concerns at all? And understand that there have been black women in a variety of different spaces, right? Because as Alice Walker herself said, womanism is to feminism as purple is to lavender. So womanism and feminism are separate, but they're not enemies to each other. Okay? It's just womanism was like the first space that was specifically created to address the multiple identities that black women exist in, and then the concept of intersectional feminism expanded upon that idea. But there have been black women in women-centered spaces, whether they were womanist spaces, whether they were feminist spaces, whether they were radical feminist spaces. There have been black women in each of those areas talking about the importance of us making sure that we don't ignore the things that we experience based on our gender. And it's been black radical feminists, okay, who have been saying we don't have any problems with, people who choose to live their lives as male to female transgendered people. But when your activism seeks to erase biological black womanhood, this is a problem. It was black radical feminists who were having those conversations when it was extremely unpopular to do so. Something that I've been finding out over the past few days and will research further. Okay? Black radical feminists have literally been out here doing the goddess's work to make sure that, okay, well, wait a minute, you can't erase womanhood from conversations about healthcare, because there are certain health-related issues that we experience specifically because we are women. There are certain issues with reproductive health that we experience specifically because we are women who are black. I've talked to you before about how our higher estrogen levels make us more susceptible to certain types of breast cancer and certain types of reproductive health issues. So you can't take biological womanhood off of the table because it offends you. Because then what is this going to mean? What is this going to mean for the healthcare outcomes and socioeconomic outcomes and so many other outcomes for black women? It's been black radical feminists who have been lighting the torch when it comes to those conversations. But so many black women have ignored that because you treat the word feminist, and especially the term radical feminist, like it's a pejorative. So you don't want anything to do with it, even though it's been black women in those spaces who have been trying to protect and preserve your natural womanhood. Anyway, I'll talk about this further in my blog.